Post 1. Am I the jerk for blaming my sister for my miscarriage? I am the older sister, and the herbal tea ruined my pregnancy story my family will not let die. Most people who hear it are probably going to come at this from my sister's side because she's the one who lost her degree and her career path. But I am the one who actually lost a baby. I am the one who woke up in a pool of blood. So if my tone is defensive, that's why. I'm in my late 20s now. I have a 3-year-old daughter, a fiance, and on paper, my life looks back on track. What I do not have is a clean conscience about how I handled my first pregnancy or about what I did to my little sister, Maya. Growing up, we were opposites. I was loud, social, always snacking, always on my phone. Maya was the label reader. She packed her own food in glass containers, tracked her steps, and read nutrition blogs for fun. I teased her constantly. At family dinners, I'd wave a fry at her and say, "You're going to give yourself scurvy with all that rabbit food." Everyone laughed. I was normal. She was intense. Our parents leaned into it. I was the one who lived a little. She was the one who took everything too seriously. She went off to university for kinesiology and sports therapy. I drifted between retail, salon work, and a couple of half-finished courses. I acted like I didn't care, but I was jealous. She had a plan. I had chaos and funny stories. When I found out I was pregnant the first time, it felt like I finally had something that was mine that she couldn't outstudy me on. I wasn't married. The father was barely in the picture, but my parents lit up. My mom started buying tiny clothes immediately. My dad told anyone who would listen that he was finally going to be a grandpa. For once, I was the center of the family for a good reason. I did not suddenly become a model patient. I cut back on energy drinks, quit smoking, and tried in a vague way to eat better. But I was still hitting drive-thrus too often. My OB mentioned my weight and blood sugar more than once. It felt like generic doctor nagging, not a siren. I told myself I felt fine, so the baby must be fine. Maya came home one weekend with a care package. There was a mug that said, "Rest is productive," a nice bottle of prenatal vitamins, and a box of herbal tea. Caffeine-free, pregnancy-safe, all that. The label practically shouted that it was fine. I felt two things at once, genuinely touched that she'd thought of me, and deeply annoyed that she was turning my pregnancy into another project. She went over the ingredients, talked about chamomile helping sleep. I rolled my eyes and let her talk because my parents were watching. That night, we were all in the living room. My dad had some show on. My mom was fussing with blankets. Maya got up and made me a cup of the tea. I remember saying, "If this tastes like lawn clippings, I'm sending you the hospital bill." She laughed and handed it to me. It was a little weird tasting, but not awful. Everyone saw exactly what it was. No hidden bottle, no secret powder. I went to bed. Hours later, I woke up with awful cramps and a horrible wet feeling. I turned on the light. There was blood everywhere. I screamed. My mom ran in. My dad called an ambulance. After that, it's flashes, sirens, bright emergency room lights, the look on the nurse's face. At the hospital, they confirmed it. I had lost the baby. The grief was white noise. My mom kept repeating, "Everything was fine. Everything was fine." My brain grabbed at the only thing that had changed that evening, the tea. Maya came into the room looking like a ghost. My parents were on either side of my bed. I remember staring at her and hearing myself say, "You did this. You gave me that stuff. I told you not to mess with me." I don't know if I had literally said those words to her before that night. In my head, though, it felt true. She was always messing with my body and choices, telling me what I should eat or drink. Saying it out loud turned all of that into one clear accusation. My mom's face hardened in a way I had never seen. "What did you give her?" she demanded. Maya kept saying it was just chamomile, that the box said safe, that she had shown us. My dad muttered, "You were always experimenting," and that hit something dark and satisfied in me. Because as much as it hurts to admit, in that moment, it felt better to believe this was something someone did to me than to look at my own choices or at randomness. If the story was my body failed, then I had failed. If the story was she gave me something and then this happened, someone else failed me. In the days that followed, that version set like concrete. My mom said the tea with pure hatred. At church, she told people, Hannah lost the baby after her sister gave her some herbal drink that didn't sit right. Maya tried to apologize and defend herself. I shut down and let my mother speak for us. Then my mom contacted Maya's university. I didn't know the exact wording, just that she told them her health sciences daughter had given something to a pregnant woman and the baby died that night. Inside my grief, it felt like justice. Maya wanted to be trusted with people's bodies. She had messed with mine, actions and consequences. I wrote a long post about losing a baby because someone I trusted cared more about trying wellness ideas than following doctor's orders. That really was how it felt to me then. People reacted the way you might expect. I'd never forgive her. I hope you cut her off. She basically poisoned you. That last phrasing wasn't mine originally, but I did nothing to push back on it. It fit the size of the pain. Meanwhile, Maya's life fell apart. Funding gone. Practicum canceled. She withdrew and moved away. My mom would occasionally show me a muted text from her and say, "She still refuses to admit what she did?" I nodded, because that slotted neatly into the story where I was the wronged one and she was the reckless one. I conveniently left out the missed appointments, the fast food, my blood sugar levels. In my version, the night itself was the whole plot. My sister brought tea, I drank it, I woke up in blood. Now, years later, people in the family have started saying I weaponized my loss, and I know there is more to the medical side than I have ever really faced. I'm not pretending I didn't hurt. I'm just not sure I can keep pretending it was as simple as I made it. Given everything I've told you, am I the jerk for how hard I leaned into blaming my sister? And for how long I let that version stand, knowing deep down it was more complicated than, "She ruined my pregnancy with 1 cup of tea"? Update 1. After the miscarriage, my world shrank to 2 things: grief and the story that made the grief bearable. The grief was obvious: the unfinished nursery, the appointments I no longer had, the way my body still expected to be pregnant for weeks afterward. I'd wake at 3 a.m. and reach for my stomach, and it felt like the universe had played a trick on me. The story was how I made other people comfortable enough to stay in the room. "My sister gave me this herbal tea," I'd say. I trusted her, and that same night, people filled in the rest. They knew where outrage belonged. They told me I was strong. They told me I deserved better. They told me they'd never forgive her. That kind of reaction is like pain medication. It doesn't fix anything, but it numbs the part of your brain screaming, "Why?" Online, I wrote about someone I loved putting their wellness experiments ahead of my baby. The comments were predictable. Some talked about lawsuits. Some used words I hadn't considered, and I let those stand too. Every furious message made my loss feel less random. Maya disappeared from our day-to-day lives. My parents cut her off financially. They told me they had spoken to her program and that the school was taking it seriously. I knew she withdrew from her course, but in my head it was framed as a choice. She was too ashamed or refusing to own it. I did not picture her sitting across from administrators being told she might not be fit to practice. Time moved, because it always does. My dad went back to work. My mom threw herself into a very specific identity: grieving grandmother. Every year on the anniversary, there were angel baby pictures, candles, paragraphs about the child we lost because someone went too far, usually with a gentle jab at her sister who still hasn't taken responsibility. I cried, I shared, I let that become part of who I was. Then I got pregnant again. This time, everyone tried to wrap me in metaphorical bubble wrap. My mom hovered. My dad added little safety things around the house. Friends brought casseroles and rainbow-themed gifts. I felt like I was starring in the sequel to a very sad movie. My new OB was more blunt than my first. At my intake appointment, she opened my file and looked at me. "Because of your history of gestational diabetes and poor control in your previous pregnancy," she said, "we're going to treat this one as high risk from the start." Poor control hit like a slap. I laughed too loudly. "I don't know why it says that. Everything was fine until, you know?" She didn't smile. "Your file shows multiple elevated readings, including some very high ones. There are notes about missed appointments and not following the recommended diet. You were counseled more than once about an increased risk of fetal loss." My Aunt Linda was there with me. I could feel her eyes on the side of my face. On the drive home, she finally said, "You never told us it was that bad." I stared out the window and latched onto defensiveness. Doctors always write dramatic notes, I said. They cover themselves so they can say, "We warned you." In there, she said quietly. It didn't sound like just covering themselves. At home, my mom pounced. How did it go? Is the baby okay? What did they say? She asked in one breath. She's going on about blood sugar again, I said. Like last time. What do you mean, like last time? Linda asked. She talked about missed appointments and bad numbers. My mom's face went tight. For a second, she looked worried. Then it hardened into something familiar. Doctors always try to blame the mother, she said. We know what happened. Everything was fine until the tea. I am not letting them dump this on you. I let that comfort me. It was so much easier to hang on to a clear external cause than to wade into questions about my own habits. What if I had followed the diet? What if I hadn't missed appointments? What if the loss would have happened anyway? Those questions don't have neat answers. Maya gave me something, did. It kept me the injured party instead of a walking cautionary tale. I wish I could say that appointment snapped me into honesty. It didn't. I followed every rule for the second pregnancy because I was terrified, but in conversations, I kept the first story simple. The tea. The night. My sister. The crack in that version didn't really start to widen until years later when my dad's heart gave out and we all ended up in the same church again. Update 2. If the first update was about me clinging to my story, this is where it started to fall apart whether I wanted it to or not. My second pregnancy was textbook high risk, but I actually did what they told me. I checked my blood sugar like it was a part-time job. I went to every appointment. I ate boring, careful meals. It was miserable and scary, but it ended with a healthy baby girl. Everyone cried when she was born. My mom called her proof that blessings can come after storms. The angel baby posts changed tone. Now there were side-by-side collages. The baby we lost because of a terrible mistake, and the blessing we have now. The terrible mistake was still very clearly my sister. Maya stayed gone. I knew, in a vague way, that she was working at a gym in another city. My mom said it with a sneer. Front desk somewhere, like that was the punchline. We did not talk. I told myself that was her choice. Then my dad died. One day he was complaining about parts prices. That night my mom called from the hospital, distraught. Heart attack. They tried. He was gone. It floored me. Whatever else you say about my dad, he had always been the one who kept certain lines from being crossed. He still texted Maya on holidays, even when my mom hated it. He changed the subject when conversations at family dinners got too pointed. Losing him felt like losing any hope of things softening someday. When Aunt Linda told me she had called Maya about the funeral, my first reaction was anger. Why? I snapped. She walked away from us. She lost her father too, Linda said. She deserves the choice to say goodbye. I didn't have a good answer to that, so I sulked and picked out flowers. At the funeral, I saw Maya for the first time in years. She walked in quietly, in a simple black dress, looking older but steadier. She didn't dart around or fidget. She just moved like someone who had rehearsed being in rooms where she wasn't welcome. My mom stiffened beside me. She has some nerve, she whispered. I watched Maya sit a few rows back. Our eyes didn't meet. The service blurred past. Stories about my dad's work ethic, how he loved being a grandfather. There were photos of him holding my daughter, painting the nursery, standing beside me at balloon releases for the first baby. There were no recent pictures of him with Maya. After the service, people went downstairs for coffee and sandwiches. I stayed upstairs for a bit with my daughter to get her to eat. A few minutes later, my cousin Karen came in looking flustered. Your aunt is talking to Maya, she said. I thought you should know. I went to the top of the stairs. I didn't go all the way down. I just listened. I heard Linda's voice. They told you about the gestational diabetes, about the numbers, about the missed appointments? Then Maya, sounding very flat. No one ever told me that. I've been hearing for years that everything was healthy until I gave her tea. Linda said something like, the doctor said outright it was a big factor. I thought they told you. I'm sorry. I felt sick. That appointment, the one with the OB going through my chart, was not some vague suggestion. It was documented. It had been said out loud in a room. My aunt had heard it. My mom had heard it later. I had decided not to repeat it because it complicated the story. Now Maya was hearing it for the first time at our father's funeral. Later, my mom cornered me in a side hallway. Your sister is trying to start a fight, she hissed. She brought up your medical history in front of your aunt, at your father's funeral. Can you believe that? Somewhere under my grief, a quieter voice in me said, Of course she did. How else is she supposed to get answers? Out loud, I said, Well, maybe if we had told her more. Absolutely not, my mom snapped. We know what really happened. Everything was fine until that tea. I am not letting anyone rewrite this to make her feel better. I'd heard that tone my whole life. It used to make me feel protected. Now it made me feel slightly ill. I did not talk to Maya that day. I watched her leave earlier than people thought she should, holding herself very straight, and I called it cold. The truth is, I understood, more than I wanted to admit, why she wouldn't want to stand around comforting people who had been telling a half story about her for years. After the funeral, things went strangely quiet. Fewer long grief posts, fewer speeches about what she did to us. I thought maybe everyone was just too exhausted. Then my mom showed up at my place with a thick envelope. She's suing us, she said, dropping it on the table. Your sister is suing me, and you, and the school. I picked it up with shaky hands. The language blurred, but certain words jumped out. Defamation, false statements, educational harm, professional harm. She's claiming we lied about her, my mom said, trembling. She's claiming we destroyed her future. She is trying to get money out of your baby's death. My first reaction was pure anger. How could she drag our pain into courtrooms? How could she drag strangers into something that had gutted me? Then I read one line in the summary again. False statements about the cause of miscarriage in the context of known gestational diabetes and other complications. Known. It hit me for the first time that those notes and warnings and missed appointments were not just background noise. They were going to be center stage if this continued. We hired a lawyer. My mom called it an attack. He called it a case. And I started having to answer questions I had managed to avoid for years. Update 3. I didn't fully understand what I had stepped into until my own deposition and the motion hearing. Our lawyer tried to reassure me. We're going to argue this is protected opinion, spoken in grief, he said. The judge might agree and end it before trial. My mother latched onto that. Exactly, she said. How dare anyone say we can't talk about what we went through? Then I sat down for my deposition. It was in a bland conference room. Fluorescent lights, a jug of water, a court reporter at a little machine. Maya wasn't there, just her lawyer and ours. They swore me in and started walking through my life like it was a checklist. Did your sister give you herbal tea the night you miscarried? Yes. Did you believe at the time that it contributed to the loss? Yes. Did you tell family, church members, and others that she caused the miscarriage? I said it happened after the tea. I probably agreed when people framed it that way. Did you refer to her as dangerous, reckless? I might have. I was very upset. Did you inform those same people that you had gestational diabetes, multiple high readings, and missed appointments? Not really, no. They slid documents across the table, my medical chart with red pen around the worst numbers, notes about missed appointments, warnings, a copy of my long grief post where I talked about my sister's experiments, an email my mom sent the university describing Maya as having knowingly given an unsafe concoction to a pregnant family member, resulting in fetal loss. The lawyer asked, At the time this email was sent, did you know your sister had used a commercially packaged tea labeled pregnancy safe? Yes, I said quietly. Did you correct that description with the university? No. At one point he asked, Do you believe today that your sister caused the miscarriage? I opened my mouth, then closed it. I don't know, I said. I know it's not that simple, but it's how it felt. He nodded, like he'd expected that. Feelings and factual statements aren't always the same, he said. That's what this case is about. I went home afterwards feeling wrung out. Up to that point, I'd always framed my version as just my truth. Seeing it cross-referenced with scan after scan and appointment notes made it feel less like a diary entry and more like a report. Then came the motion hearing. Our lawyer argued first. He talked about grief, cultural norms, how families use strong language in private and semi public spaces to process loss. He tried to wrap everything we'd ever said about Maya in the blanket of emotion rather than assertion. Then Maya's lawyer laid out her side in a way that felt like being dissected. She listed dates, the miscarriage, my mother's email, my posts, the angel baby anniversaries. She quoted exact phrases: unsafe concoction, cost us our grandchild, danger to patients. She pointed to my chart: gestational diabetes, poor control, documented missed appointments, repeated warnings about fetal risk. Despite this, she said, they consistently told third parties, including an educational institution, that Maya's actions caused the miscarriage, as if that were a settled medical fact. Then she called a witness I had hoped would stay out of this: Tasha, a former coworker from that time. Tasha confirmed we'd worked together when I was pregnant. She said I'd talked about cheating on the diet, about skipping appointments, about doctors being dramatic. That was mortifying, but not surprising. Then Maya's lawyer asked, after the miscarriage, did Hannah talk to you about how her family was reacting? Yes, Tasha said. She said they were blaming her sister because of some tea. What, if anything, did she say about that blame? Tasha glanced at me, then back at the lawyer. She said something like, it's easier this way. They'd never forgive me if they knew how bad my numbers actually were. I remembered that conversation. Sitting on a crate in the stockroom, mascara streaked, venting to the one coworker who had seen me sneak fast food on breaks. I had not been plotting. I had been overwhelmed and bitter and trying to put words to the twisted relief that came with everyone focusing on Maya instead of my chart. Hearing it stripped down to one sentence in a courtroom made it sound colder than it felt in my head. But it also wasn't wrong. Our lawyer tried to salvage it on cross-examination. He asked if I had been crying. Tasha said yes. He asked if I had seemed calculating. She said no, just devastated. But she repeated that it stuck with her because it sounded like I knew the situation wasn't as simple as the version my family used. The judge didn't grandstand. He just listened, asked a few clarifying questions about how public the statements were, and then, later that morning, said he was denying our motion to dismiss. In careful, neutral language, he said there was enough evidence that we may have presented factual claims, that Maya caused the miscarriage, that were not fully supported, given the medical context, and that those claims might have caused real harm to her education and career. A full hearing of the facts, he said, was appropriate. My mom was furious. So now we're being punished for talking about our grief? She whispered as we left. That man doesn't understand what it's like to lose a grandchild? I didn't say anything. I just clutched the copy of my deposition and Tasha's testimony and felt like someone had turned the lights on in a room I'd been keeping dim on purpose. Up until that point, I had always told myself it was all messier than outsiders could understand, and that repeating the tea story was just me clinging to something I could name. After that hearing, it was harder to pretend I hadn't also been benefiting from a version that pushed most of the blame onto someone else. Update 4. After the judge refused to throw the case out, everything split into two parallel lives. In one, I was still just Hannah, mom of a preschooler, arguing about glitter shoes in February, trying to save for a house, working, dealing with laundry and daycare schedules. In the other, I was part of a lawsuit where every conversation, post, and email about my sister was a potential exhibit. Our lawyer laid it out plainly. We can go to trial, he said. Best case, you win and pay nothing, but all of this becomes public record. Worst case, you lose, pay significantly more than anything on the table now, and end up with a written judgment that is much harsher than any private agreement. What's on the table now? I asked. He slid a document over. It was a revised settlement proposal from Maya's side. In short, if we signed a statement acknowledging that we were wrong to say Maya caused the miscarriage, admitted that my gestational diabetes and other medical factors were significant contributors, shared that statement in the same circles where we'd spread the original story, then Maya would drop the lawsuit, agree not to bring further claims about the miscarriage, accept a fixed monetary amount as compensation for the damage to her reputation and education. My mother read it and immediately declared it blackmail. She wants to make us pay to pretend the tea never happened, she said. I will not stand up and say my daughter did nothing wrong. I read it and felt something different. Nausea, but also a kind of grim recognition. The draft statement was not flattering, but it didn't feel false. It said we had unfairly focused blame on Maya and failed to talk about the full medical context. It said grief doesn't make every accusation accurate. It said we no longer believed she caused the miscarriage. The key line they insisted on was simple. We were wrong to say that Maya's actions caused the miscarriage. That sentence will never come out of my mouth, my mother said. Never. After she left, my fiancé Mark looked at me. What do you think? He asked. I snapped, I think I want my baby back and my dad alive and none of this to have ever happened. I know, he said. But within reality, statement and settlement, or years more of this? He waited, then added, does that sentence, Maya's actions did not cause the miscarriage, feel like a lie to you? I sat there for a long time. I thought about the OB's notes, the warnings, the nights I'd joked about my numbers while eating fries. The tea, yes, but also everything that came before it. It doesn't feel like a lie, I said finally. It just feels like giving up the only simple explanation I've been holding on to. Maybe that explanation has been hurting all of you, he said. In the end, it wasn't a dramatic turning point. It was a tired, quiet decision that I could not put my daughter through years of hearings, nor could I keep pretending the medical chart didn't matter. Our lawyer went back and forth with theirs on wording. We asked that the statement also note that grief and shock played a role in how we spoke at the time. Maya's side agreed, as long as the core admission stayed clear. The final statement read, in part, in the aftermath of a devastating loss, we focused our blame on Maya and repeatedly said and implied that her actions caused the miscarriage. We were wrong to say that Maya's actions caused the miscarriage. Medical records make clear that there were significant complications, including unmanaged gestational diabetes, and we do not believe that Maya intentionally or unintentionally caused the loss of our grandchild. Seeing my name under that on a draft made my stomach twist, but I signed. Reading it out loud was worse. At church, our pastor introduced it gently, saying something about seeking truth and reconciliation. My mother read most of it into the microphone, voice tight and shaking. When she reached the key line, she hesitated just long enough for everyone to notice, then forced it out. I stood beside her, feeling dozens of eyes on us. We also sent the statement by email to extended family and posted a version in the spaces where we'd told the original story. My name appeared under my mother's on every copy. Some relatives replied with, "Thank you for your honesty." Others said nothing. A few sent angry messages about us giving in and rewarding Maya. My mother now tells anyone who will listen that she was forced to say things she didn't mean, so she wouldn't lose the house. To her, that's the new story. The settlement money came and went quickly. Legal bills, some debt, a chunk toward a down payment. We are not ruined, but we feel it. What surprised me most was the quiet that followed. Fewer angel baby posts, fewer long speeches casting Maya as the sole cause of everything that went wrong. The story still lives in my mother's house, but it's weaker when people can point to a signed statement where she admitted it wasn't true. As for me, I'm left sitting in the middle. I did go through something horrific. I did lose a baby. I did spend nights on the bathroom floor wondering if my body was broken forever. I also spent years using that pain to support a version of events that left my sister bearing most of the blame. And I didn't really question that until someone forced me to see it laid out in documents. Saying we were wrong didn't make me a saint. It just took away the last excuse I had for not looking directly at what I'd done. Final update. It's been almost 2 years since we read that statement and the lawsuit ended. From the outside, my life looks unremarkable. I get up, pack a preschool lunch, argue with my 4-year-old about weather-appropriate footwear, drop her off, scroll my phone in the car for 10 minutes, go to work. I come home, make dinner, try to keep up with laundry, fall asleep on the couch halfway through a show. There are days when I don't consciously think about hospital tiles or angel baby posts. Then something tiny will knock it all loose. A box of chamomile at the grocery store, a gestational diabetes infographic someone shares, a casual comment about, "My sister and I are so close." My chest tightens. My brain tries to run 2 versions of my life at once. The version where Maya and I joke about borrowed clothes and complain about our parents, and the one I actually lived, where I pointed at her in a hospital and let that accusation define us for years. The lawsuit forced a lot into the open, but it didn't fix the internal part. That has been slower. After the settlement, Mark said, "You need to talk to someone who isn't your mother or a lawyer. Otherwise, this is going to keep leaking into everything." I insisted I was fine. Then my daughter started having nightmares. One night, she woke up sobbing, clinging to me, saying, "Grandma said you might go away to court and never come back." My mom had been on speaker with me earlier, complaining about the case, and my daughter had clearly heard more than we thought. That broke something in me. I could live with carrying my own guilt. I couldn't live with my kid absorbing a warped, half-explained version of it. I found a therapist who works with grief and family conflict. The first session, I started out defensive, ready to explain how much pain I'd been in when I said what I said about Maya. Instead, what came out was, I don't know how to hold being the person something terrible happened to and the person who made it worse for someone else. She didn't rush to reassure me. She didn't tell me it was all understandable. She asked me to tell the story as if she'd never heard any version. No shorthand, no, you know the tea thing. It was harder than I expected to say the plain parts. To say, I ignored the diabetes warnings. To say, it felt good when people were furious with my sister for me. To say, when I said it was easier if they blamed her, I meant it in more than one way. We talked about two kinds of responsibility. There's what your body did or didn't do, she said. No one can go back and run that experiment again. Then there's what you did with the story of what happened. Those are separate. That distinction weirdly helped. I cannot rewrite the physics of my first pregnancy. I can, however, admit that I chose over and over to repeat the version that hurt Maya the most and left out the parts that complicated my own innocence. We also talked about attention. What did it give you? She asked one week. To be the person everyone rallied around as the one who'd been wronged? I wanted to say, nothing. It was all awful. But if I was honest, it gave me something. A script, a clear role, a way to feel like my suffering had witnesses. And what did it cost your sister? She asked. That answer is obvious now and heavy. It cost her an education, a career path, a place in the family. It cost her years of being treated like a danger, not just by relatives, but by institutions that trusted our version. It probably cost her the chance to ever look at me as just her big sister again. My therapist is careful not to let grief erase that. Grief explains why you reached for a simple story, she says. It doesn't undo the harm that story did. As for Maya, there is still no contact. After the statement, she did not reach out, and neither did I. The last time I saw her up close was at a cousin's wedding. She was across the room in a navy dress, laughing with someone I didn't know. She looked steadier than I remember. Our eyes met once. I gave a small nod. She gave a polite, distant half-smile you'd give a stranger. Then she turned back to her conversation. I went to the bathroom and cried quietly, not because she was cruel, but because it hit me that this might be all that's left between us. Nods from across rooms and legal documents. Sometimes I draft messages in my head. I'm sorry I used my grief as a weapon. I'm sorry I let everyone believe you were the only reason. I'm sorry I enjoyed the attention more than I should have. None of them feel right. They either center me too much or dance around the worst parts. My therapist keeps reminding me that apologies aren't coupons for forgiveness. They're about seeing the other person clearly. Do you see Maya as a full person yet? She asks. Or only as the role she played in your story? That question bothers me more than anything in the court process did. My relationship with my mother is complicated. She still tells people she had to say things she didn't mean to keep her house. She still insists the tea tipped everything over the edge, even if she doesn't say out loud anymore that it was the whole cause. I have started setting small boundaries. No talking about what Maya did in front of my daughter. No rerunning the hospital night at every holiday. Sometimes she accuses me of taking Maya's side. Sometimes I probably am. I don't know if I'm redeemed. I don't think I get to claim that. I lived for years inside a version of events where I was the only one anyone needed to feel sorry for. And I only started stepping outside it when I was backed into a corner legally. What I am now is more honest with myself than I have ever been. My pain was real. My loss was real, but so was the damage I helped inflict. I carried my grief like shrapnel, and I aimed too much of it at my sister because it was easier than sitting with uncertainty and my own mistakes. I can't change what that did to her life. The best I can do now is stop pretending that being hurt gave me a blank check to hurt her back and raise my daughter in a way that doesn't teach her that someone else always has to carry the blame for her pain.